The garrote was a handheld ligature used by various countries to carry out executions. It is a weapon that is used to strangle someone, and it can be made from a variety of materials such as rope, scarf, fishing wire, or even chain. There are some who used it throughout the centuries in the form of a contraption that tightened around the neck of a condemned person. Throughout the years, it has also been used as a murder weapon and has been historically made from materials such as telephone cord, guitar strings, and even piano wire. The garrote, a tool used for execution, has a long history dating back to ancient Rome in the 1st century BC. It was utilized to strangle numerous conspirators and continued to be used in various countries throughout the centuries. In the medieval period, the garrote was employed by both the Spanish and the Portuguese, particularly for executing heretics during the Spanish Inquisition. The garrote is most closely associated with Spain, where it was commonly used, particularly during the Spanish conquest of the Americas. One of the most notable victims of the garrote was the Inca Emperor Atahualpa, who was put to death using this method. After his execution, his skin and clothing were burned, and his remains were buried in a Christian ceremony, a further disgrace to his death. The Spanish themselves would experience the use of the garrote during the Peninsular War from 1808 to 1814, as French soldiers employed the weapon to strangle Spanish opponents of Napoleon's rule. Despite its association with Spain, the use of the garrote and strangulation as a method of execution spread to other places as well. In the Ottoman Empire, it was considered a form of execution reserved for the elite class. Only members of the royal family and high-ranking government officials were put to death using this method. A bowstring was often used as the instrument of death in the Ottoman Empire. Executions using the garrote were often carried out in public. The process was similar to that of a typical public execution, where the condemned individual was escorted by guards and a priest from their prison cell to the scaffold. A priest would give them final prayers before they were strangled in front of a crowd. The executioners were considered skilled in their jobs, as they were able to perform the execution quickly by ensuring the condemned were tied to posts and stakes to prevent struggle and fight as the life was choked out of them. In 1810, a metallic version of the garrote emerged in Spain. On April 28, 1828, it was officially declared that the garrote was the only method of execution for civilians within the country. In May 1897, the last public garroting in Spain was carried out in Barcelona. After that, all executions were done privately within the prison. There were various variations of the garrote execution method. One such version was a chair with ropes and rings, with locks for the wrists, forearms, waist, and legs of the condemned individual. One version of the garrote had a chair with a backrest that featured a wooden pole with a collar to secure the prisoner's neck and a bolt that rotated. The end of the bolt was often a razor blade or a sharp spike in the shape of a star. When the executioner tightened the device, the spikes would dig into the prisoner's neck, breaking their spinal cord, causing death. These improvised versions of the garrote made death quicker, as it eliminated the need to wait for asphyxiation. They were considered more reliable than the traditional garrote. However, these machines did have some issues, such as the bolt malfunctioning and going through the neck without hitting the spine, causing the offender a great deal of pain that wasn't always fatal. In the 1800s, a witness described a garroting as follows. The bound person was dragged to the gallows and made to sit on a narrow bench, with their back tied to a heavy post. The executioner locked in the steel collar and fastened it to the post at the neck. When everything was ready, he took both hands and grabbed hold of the hand wheel, signaling to his assistant to throw a black handkerchief over the condemned person's face, covering their face. He then began turning the handle. The prisoner's jerking arms and heaving chest were signs that life was leaving them. After resting for a few moments, the executioner peered under the handkerchief, made another turn of the wheel, and pulled the veil. Along with the dead body, the final convulsions were visible as the man's mouth gaped open and his eyes bulged out. The origins of the specific style of garrote described in this account is believed to have been invented by a Spanish man named Garrote, who gave his name to the instrument of death. He had reportedly witnessed a failed hanging of a family member, and thus attempted to create a more efficient method of execution. However, it is widely believed in Spain that the device was a cruel aspect of the Spanish Inquisition. The final civilian executions by garrote in Spain came in May and July of 1959, when poisoner Pilar Prades and serial killer Jose Maria Jarabo were executed in prison. However, there were more executions carried out within the military, which did not come to an end until the 1970s. Heinz Shea and Salvador Puig Antic in March 1974 were sentenced to death for killing police officers, and they were the final two state-sanctioned garroting in the world. Some criminals in Spain did request execution by garrote, but following the final two executions, the sentences were commuted to imprisonment. Interestingly, the final country to abolish garroting as a method of executing criminals was Andorra in 1990. However, it had not been used to execute criminals since the late 1100s, making the outlawing of it rather pointless. Today, the garrote is most closely associated with Spain, similar to how the guillotine is a symbol of France. In conclusion, the garrote was an execution method that could be primitive or more complex, and as time went on, the machines were used to more reliably take the life of a criminal. Those who often faced this brutal punishment were murderers. Despite some malfunctions with the weapon, it was considered reliable, particularly when using the machine version. Choking the life out of a prisoner who was tied to a stake was a more primitive method and could take a lot longer, as it would rely on the condemned person's asphyxiation. To support the channel, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and join us in the next video.